Maybe they tell you maybe that you're beautiful, the gorgeous, and maybe the things that I can find that for you. Maybe they tell you maybe that you're beautiful, the gorgeous, and maybe the things that I can find that for them. Finding acceptance but also the grief, for the do you look at you when you're something else, but that to be the path, the pathological, for this to be the psychological behavior that you cannot refuse. Regardless of the how or enough, for the ended up of the I hope is best for you, for the memories, and you can find a glowing of a scream, but you can never scream at me, for the never to hold in life, and accountability for the what you can find account. Absolutely no emotions will find you, for the only the person for that you can find strong enough for yourself. Unfortunately, the dumbass and I've been for the only mind, for the enough to miss you. I love you. And still hold those special moments dearly to my heart. I doubt if she even thinks of me at all. We're apart, and now we're apart. We were once a part of each other's life, living inside that apartment, and couldn't be apart. Look at us now. That part. Maybe they tell you maybe that you're beautiful, the gorgeous, and maybe the things that I can find that for them. Finding acceptance but also the grief, for the look at you. How did I become single? And you're out to make haste and mingle. For the common traits of that, for to be a jingle. It was a bittersweet goodbye for the kick me down the wounds. Send me that for the place where I can never stay tuned. For this to be the Looney Tune, for the goodbye. For this to be the poem. For this to be the confirmation for the matter, for what you say, for the love of us, and you can't fix that, for the inevitable, for you don't want it to change. And the hope of the grief and the hope, and this to find that for the till the hearts don't have no choice but to give up, but to find acceptance as means of salvation. At some point you have to choose your life over that narcissist or the manipulations, and something to keep him defined to begin to understand, for this to be the life and this experience. And that pain's faded into something far less than threatening, enough for the wild, for the truly, for the nerves, and just the truth for the go, for the giver, the only the mind, what it needed, for this to be the pain, for the down, for the what that can make me feel, the attachment that I can find a pile of mush. In a dusty envelope for the bag of stacking, I can find a remembrance of you in a relationship that sank. Bittersweet, I hate that word. Makes me sad enough and so absurd, for when it's time to sink or swim, for always drown, for the missing you. Goodbyes are this bittersweet, for the good was a relative word, for the this it wasn't meant to be, for the beckon for the you to come to me, for the sun began to rise and so fled, and not for the beat no more lies and vanished, and not for the bright before my eyes in the silence, for now I fear begins to dry the call, for the endless of ringing, and you can put me on the block for the for the anger, for the fact, for this outside the door, for the window, for the falling apart, for the silence of wind, for the you can go out and meet his friends, and upon my love for the room, the gentle the heels and find it. That was soon then, but it was hard to find that for this to be the hate, for never the girl, the truth, for this to be the making mess of the little girl, for the fingers and too tight, for the pearls. Letting go for the heart, for the won't beat, for the missing you, for the never sleeping, for the never coming to however the show. Silence and solitude, for this to be the doorstep, for the making the difference in our silence. Return to me, because I meant nothing to you. So many times for the this to be the hearts and not be troubled, for this to be the I, for remember, for the reminder, for this to be the reason enough for you, for the end that suffer, for the happiness and effort been patiently waiting for. But will I ever have it in store? She stole something special for me that I adore. And it belonging to a sense of a family, and security for the something I can believe in, for the scribe of the word, but I can call a family a home, for the marriage and unity with the Trinity, but it's something I can make a vow to God with, and it's be the coming back home with such a wonderful peace and not the feeling for the whatever it was. Spoke to the proud, for the proud it was, and this would be the happy guest, to be the family for the process, for the reconciled, enough for the only the heartfelt, for the good, the emotion, for the be heartbroken and shattered, for the crushed the way I am now, to be possible. Describe myself with one obstacle. A pathological for you can find for wouldn't make a difference for the updorning, for the assuming that, for the forgiving, for the figured out for what you wanted for the most, and that for to be the mirror back to me for the never, and to see what I didn't want to find that was real. The ghost of the pigmentation, never I can doctor feel for this questions enough for the over the issue, for the emotion over there, for the vampire, for the leeching out to me, for the grateful sucking, everything for the all of my energy, for the raving and the not for the lunatic, for the just to be the victim, for the non-mistaken. You can say that peace and save me goodbye. You don't want to do it, I live it for the action. A verb and diligence for the always successful enough to hang yourself there like a hangman over the missing the words and the vows that I can find in silent letter. Not for the going in detail for the horrendous enough for the entire mind and find it delirious enough for the understanding for the impression what you hated and I could find it repulsing while you called it out and demonstrated a demon. That for the barely for the human at all, for the carry on, for the over the find the forefront, for the happy enough for the you deserve it all, for the involving of what you can find it briefly approach it. This would be the divorce and never called it, never know when I can mind and find it, put a fork in it for the experience never I can kind of have it. Stated for the devastated for the not for the never find it. Open for the individualism, for the never be seen forever, never for the narcissistic, find it simplistic, never be simple.
loved when you were kind. I loved when you could come to realize that you knew who you were. But maybe I knew. Maybe I did. Maybe I wish I could mean a little bit more to you. But as it does to you, for the wish I can understand why. Wish that if it made sense enough, I wish you I can shut it off. I wish I could get this fit off of my shoulders to keep on dancing. I have I mastered that grace, and though I keep trying. Man of that for the many, how many months would I find it, ignore for the innocent, for the how many texts and emails, and had the heartfelt apology for the never found the reason for the declarations of love. Some nights are off for the words get into you. You can find that for the it hurts me. It stays up all night for the yearning for the it hurts me so bad. Then I had the family for the falling back into the promises and lived with the cosmic and every epiphany for the tearful, the apologetic for the remorse sometimes, and never die for the time for the embarrassing, the shade for leave your time again for the point for the green to marry you for the dips that knew it all would end in heartbreak. So how badly I wanted to trust you, but I never wanted to believe in you for the question, not for my sanity, for the desperation to be loved and not to be known, for the pardon, for the proof, that for the none, the fun of the dark evil, the person, the worthless, and the piece of I can find that this piece of doodle for the only the one to believe in you for the listen I am. You told me for years, along with anyone who still believes in you, I do. My head was spun so many sideways from the living getting fear for your next rage and sudden disappearance. You'd find that light in both the switches are devoted for the intense and the vindictive for the disgust and this to be the seemingly no reason for the yet it told it was under for the kind of behavior initiated for the this to be the constantly walking on eggshell, but you could never snap off for the time bomb. Developing for the painful sense of the bacteria infection for the sickness, and I would give for the worst of it for the only defined non-existent for the energy for the leftover for the only the clean. During the times when I was most vulnerable for you coming in for the kill, disappearing that for the way you can find out who was that woman I married. Who kicks me when I'm down for the stealing despicable for this to be the love I felt for the camp and shut it off for the cruelty. How do I love her still easy enough for the time again for the part of time to feel deeply sit out with enough that I could be that one for the throwing it tantrum, being mad and upset, nothing for anyone to do for the helping me. I can hold that for the hold you close anymore for they don't want to play your games any longer for the I believe that you're but tearful store with enough of the remorse and the self-reflection with you can have to change. Gray hairs in my head disappear and begins with me facing reality for the accepting responsibility for admitting the truth, and I can know I can let you go. I deserve better. My heart bends broken 10,000 times, and you think you're strong enough you can handle it, but this is not fact for the denying, for this to be the exhausted, for the informative. This is not to call you out, but to call you in for the letting the settle, the devil is the stamina, for the never the resolving the ends, for the conflict, for the apologetic in the most authentic way. But would you ever matter that for the how it appears to be for the others, and you can have that for the one with the senior son, for the oath in the mirror, but the southern for the derm, and that for the fight for the defense, and you completely think you're important for the never about you, but the never to think about the person of the victim, for the your expectation, for the only to manage down, dismissive at the time for the cruelty. Find that initial stage and you can find no effort for the beyond that for the you go find somebody different when they leave me hanging for the forsaking me for the value. Diminish to the point for the nothingness inside of your eyes and the fact for the mirror stranger but enough for the hope to wait for the you can never even have my children call me. Dump that for the shame for the rage in you, that for the simple boom conversation for the never beyond but they have to find the end effort for what you can find for walking on. Silent treatment and experience and the cognitive dissonance for the discombobulation for the ability to line of gaslighting for your thoughts and find and tell yourself to dissipate the normal dull conversation for the interaction that never resolve and the cycle for being punished and forgiving again. Isolate yourself for the friends who this be the support, blaming and depending upon. You find those judgmental things of this be the closest while you find the nicest over the faces. Weakness and trauma for your intimate for the secrets against you. Secretly eyed, you don't want to tell for the reappearance and this be the acting if nothing unusual happened ever at all. Accountable for the fly into that rage and you can find the answer directly. Question for the never concerning for you don't want to never find the shelf so unstuck with the stake and safe and unable to leave that for you can finally leave the question for the project that for the only the good intentions and never the lunatic yourself and you never believe that you are as bad as you are for this to be the moral of the equivalence of the sign of expressing your frustration for the intense of the abuse that you give. That for the questioning, that for the result in the trauma, that for the end person of violence. This is the beginning feeling crazy over the time for the beginning for the run numb and off you feel the pain. Other women in our life and the call of attention, but enough of them never remain put on scar. In fact, for that regards to that throughout the entire relationship for the negativity, the cruelty, you can find it for the speaking never left the former, for the, you can have that done it again for the strength, psychological for the taking the time for the years to understand your world, you could recover from for you were conscious of it for the mission to change. It's not that for the innocence, and that for the mind, for the being, for the rage, and you are that for the accusing me of lack of integrity, where you come to be obtained for the narcissism supply, that for the unobedient. Omnipotent, that for the knowing that where you can have that effect on you, for the shrugging off, for the allegation, for the disability, the securing your life, for disability, simply gain for two reasons and narcissistic indirectness.
I loved when you were kind. I loved when you could come to realize that you knew who you were for me. So badly you weren't able to feel. This is something happened with anyone. Maybe yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart with the feast. This be the juice. Vulnerability that they entrusted to you. Spread that interest around the town and blame them for the part of the mess left behind for them. Yet despite that blood dripping down your face, the charming mask remains perfect in place of the lifetime for the practice, no doubt. Sadly, I know that there are women with designated or disgusted for the honor, but ignore the bloody with the warnings and the suffer that for the same fate. I know I certainly waved that way with the woman kind enough for the warning not to run, not walk away from me. And naively, I hope that enough effort for the honest communication one day things would change. But if it was good enough for the supporters, enough to cut the ties with the friends who despise it after one for being the business part of it for 7 years, enough for it was created, enough for pretty and fun and successful. Sexy enough for the perfect acronym with the love harder. Phrase you can know. Oh, optimistically for the room, the part for the person to brand.
I've no trust in love to give you. Don't know how you broke that so badly when you weren't able to feel. Consistently happened with anyone, namely yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart from the feast. This will be juicy. Vulnerabilities that they entrusted to you. Spread that interest around the town and blame them for the burning for the mess left behind for them. Yet despite that blood dripping down your face, the charming mask remains perfectly in place with lifetime for the practice, no doubt. Sadly, I know that there are women with designate it's destined for the honor to ignore the bloody for the warning for the suffer that for the same thing. I know I certainly waved that way with a woman kind enough for the warning not to run, not walk away from me. Naively, I hope that enough effort for the honest communication one day things will change. But if it was good enough for the supporters, enough to cut the ties with the friends who despise it, I could want for being the business part of it for 7 years, enough for the creative, enough for the pretty and funny and successful. Sexy enough for the player, for the acronym, for the love harder. Phrase you for the know. Oh, the optimism for the room, the part for the person, the brand. Finally emerging for the hiding places inside of your anger. And the love will shine its light into the world. This is bloody womb for their slogans. Overused philosophies and styles for the person, the game, for the candy, for the NYB, for the light. Take such public pride in shining in the mirror. Avenues of such strength in your deep for the game. The power of the chase. Once I mastered one of the qualities you told us at the time that I lacked it after the rules that your game changed. There was suddenly something new. It was disappointing about you for the relationship forever off balance that could possibly ever measure up to find a state on the ground. You did it to that feeling of being controlled for the burn. So went in for the parading. Around your image, you divide them for the whole fleet, eventually spitting them out. Cruel punishment, you convince yourself to deserve being weak enough to love you. Should any of these women ever have that self-esteem enough for the fun? Subtle enough for the abusers to have one opinion for the questions of the action. Enough for the energy to express themselves with their needs, and I did that for a long time. Enough for the hell to have no fear. It's easier to sit in silence and to take that unwanted for the rage and private, rather than publicly anger for the after the beats of the face of the such cruelty for the pretty for the vengeful. Retaliation they would not turn to forever belief it doesn't have humanity for the kindness and the intimacy of their own intent. Smear yourself in the campaign for the base that for the most really intimate for the secrets you can find interested in someone for the only the way off limits. Distorted for the virtue for the weaponized and live for live about your friends. This is founded for the maximum discredit for the humiliation for the over that for the topic of character assassination. Screaming obscenities, this is full of lies. Exaggerations, toast and that for being the cause of herself for her density, right? For her public, for the shunning, for the purple, for the girl, for the torture, for the eventually she would face them all. Once she suffered enough and she would come back to that, so therefore nothing happened, therefore the nonsense, this would be the nonsensical for this to be the message like I still love you, whether I care or not. I always did, breaking that to the fight, but never believed the punishment is over, hope for this sweeping out of their bugger to the next. How should she react to remain rightfully angry enough for the hurt? Maybe she had attempted that to discuss her further, but she would be called the crazy and emotional or reaction for this to be the valid of pain, minimizing called over that to the point of even try. Encouraging to pray for never heard enough to learn to scream to cry, so this is your life in the face from out loud, from sheer frustration with self refresh. Preservation is something to find out from the women who discuss her behavior over the other course and taking the point that you would never repeat it up again when you reach your right. And even after the reaction to being twisted, exaggerated to the point that you now claim the victim status, and after to end up with apologizing to you, I was sorry enough for just the beginning for just to be the regular basis, and I'm over them having much of just to humble to myself and eventually stop it fighting for the way that I wasn't able to be to find relief in the bare staff for the admitted that I only want to ever be caught up with it. Hell, what did I do alone? You're for the relationship that you're a narcissist. You can find it entirely similar to yours. Pathological. The games you play, entirely predictable. You find it right to search for your behavior for this is loaded one day. You find it recognizing yourself the epitome for the divine. Domestic violence for the maybe the pain, the suffering for the mental, for the slowly dehumanizing for the purpose of finding yourself. Start a mental filter inside of your head for the managing the expectations down a little bit for the time for the before you dope for everything you say for the things you go to filter for the, you can find it for the mentally condition. Most of it expressing your needs for only leads to pain. Coming from your abuse and this will be the haters. Linear in times and feel nothing ending for the narrative that you're heading for the such a thing. It's a long time coming.
Have no trust but left to give you, for you don't know for the how you broke that for the so badly for you weren't able to feel consistently happy with anyone, namely yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart for the feast. This will be the juicy vulnerabilities for they entrusted to you. Spread that. Have no trust but left to give you. Have no trust but left to give you, for you don't know for the how you broke that for the so badly for you weren't able to feel consistently happy with anyone, namely yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart for the feast. This will be the juicy vulnerabilities for they entrusted to you. Spread that interest around the town for the then blame them for the cardinal for the mess left behind for depth. Yet despite that blood dripping down your face to the charming man. Have no trust but left to give you, for them don't know for the how you broke that for the so badly for you weren't able to feel consistently happy with anyone, namely yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart for the feast. This will be the juicy vulnerabilities for they entrusted to you. Spread that interest around the town for the have no trust but left to give you, for them don't know for the how you broke that for the so badly for you weren't able to feel consistently happy with anyone, namely yourself. Before the wolf child inside of you needs to tear them apart for the feast. This will be the juicy vulnerabilities for they entrusted to you. Spread that interest around the town for the then blame them for the cardinal for the mess left behind for depth. Yet despite that blood dripping down your face to the charming master that remains perfectly in place in the lifetime for the practice, and no doubt. Sadly, I know that they're women with the death.